Hello and welcome to Romans chapter 2, the letter of Paul to the Romans. We're in chapter 2 looking at God's judgment of the law. In last week, Paul had dismantled the hypocrisy of the Jews who boasted in their knowledge of the law and yet broke the law, showing how that actually dishonored God greatly. And we looked at how the same spiritual pride can blight us Christians today who trust in externals, church membership, pride in the buildings, pride in being part of the visible church, or even confidence in a baptismal certificate, whilst not living up to the reality because we're not actually saved. This week, Paul looks at how circumcision has become, like the law, an idol for the Jews. So let's read out Romans chapter 2, verses 25 to 29. For circumcision indeed is of value if you obey the law, but if you break the law, your circumcision becomes uncircumcision. So if a man who's uncircumcised keeps the precepts of the law, will not his uncircumcision be regarded as circumcision? Then he who is physically uncircumcised but keeps the law will condemn. You have the written code and circumcision but break the law. For no one is a Jew is merely one outwardly, nor is circumcision outward and physical. But a Jew is one inwardly, and circumcision is a matter of the heart by the Spirit, not by the letter. His praise is not from man, but from God. So the Jews considered themselves exempt from God's judgment because they had the external privileges, the sign of circumcision, which all Jews were required to perform, all male Jews were required to perform. It was not the covenant itself, but it was a sign of the covenant, an external sign of what God had done inside real Jews. Paul affirms the value of circumcision, for it is a God-ordained institution and right, but only in the context of obedience to the law, which formed the covenant, if you obey. So disobedience rendered the sign void, as good as uncircumcision. And Paul is saying to the Jews, you may actually be uncircumcised, the very thing which you hate, which you boast about not having. So failure to keep the law made a Jew uncircumcised because it was by doing the law that they evidenced that they were God's people. Clearly, Paul was not saying that circumcision or obedience to the law saved, but rather that it was an external evidence of the reality which was inside people's hearts, the Jews' hearts, a real Jew. And this was evidenced by obedience to the law. The sign of circumcision was given to the Jews alone and to no one else. And this was such a wonderful covenant and a wonderful sign provided. So you could see it was clear. If you obeyed the law and you were God's people and you performed circumcision, it was a sign to help you see that you were God's people. But the circumcision itself wasn't where the power was. The power was in God's ability to fulfill this covenant. Circumcision was given even before the law was. Circumcision was given to Abraham. And this is what makes Paul's statement even more inflammatory, because he's saying to the Jews, are you really sons of Abraham? You're circumcised, but yes, you're disobeying the law. It is a devastating proposal to the Jews who prided themselves in their circumcision. If you think this does not relate to you, think again. If you think that maybe baptism saves you, you're in the same boat as the Jews who put their confidence in the sign rather than the reality. They ignored the reality that being honoring God and obeying His law and being in God and Christ was the reality. They put their confidence in the sign. I'm just going to do the circumcision, that makes me safe. So there was no real value in circumcision, in and of itself. Circumcision was a sign of the covenant. It proclaimed that the Jews were God's people. Circumcision was an outward sign of what was happening on the inside, the inward reality. Very similar to baptism, which shows that God has done a work in our hearts and we obey out of love and devotion to Jesus. We know that no one can obey the law fully. All have fallen short of God's standard. So if a man who is uncircumcised keeps the precepts of the law, will not his uncircumcision be regarded as circumcision? So we know that no one gets saved by obeying the law, as we've said already on multiple occasions throughout this series. And the entire Bible explains that we need Christ to save us, his finished work. So this is a theoretical attestation from Paul. If the uncircumcised person by faith kept the law through his nature, though by his nature he's uncircumcised, yet he'll be regarded as circumcised. It's a miracle. It's a wonderful thing. So he's uncircumcised, but he's fulfilling the law, and he's regarded as circumcised. But it's a theoretical thing, because no one has fulfilled the law perfectly. But Paul is using this to provoke a response from the Jews. He put confidence in circumcision. Then he who is physically uncircumcised but keeps the law will condemn you of the written code but break the law. So Paul goes further, and he states that those who are uncircumcised by nature, yet who keep the law, now stand in judgment over the Jews who rest on the external performance of the rite of circumcision without the reality of trusting in God and obeying his laws. So here's the question: who is the real Jew? Paul says that it's not merely the one who has the physical sign of circumcision, but it's those who have the reality of the inward circumcision in their hearts. Those are God's people. Those are the people who obey by faith the law of God. That's the outward sign, the obedience brought about by faith. For no one is a Jew who is merely one outwardly, nor is circumcision outward and physical. So the real Jews are uncircumcised Gentiles who keep the law by faith, or Jews who keep the law by faith. But a Jew is one inwardly, and circumcision is a matter of the heart, by the Spirit, not by the letter. His praise is not from man, but from God. So what makes a Jew is not what nation he belongs to, or his parentage, or the outward sign, but it's the inward act, an act of God by the Spirit. Circumcision is not external or outward, it's internal. God gave this sign as a way to help the Jews, but the reality was internal. It was in the heart. Only some of the Jews were actually Jews. In the same way, baptism does not save, but it is a sign of the inward work of God. It's easy to impress men and to win the praise of men, but to get the applause and the praise of God is another matter totally. The ultimate sign of the people of God is not an external thing. It is an obedience of faith, an obedience brought about by faith, as an evidencing of the reality that has already taken place inside the heart of a genuine believer. Jesus said that it is this obedience of faith that evidences what's going on the inside. And Paul says, that judgment will be based on works, because that's what we see. We can't see into people's hearts. Jews and Gentiles stand on the same level here. All must be saved by the finished work of Jesus on the cross. All have to stand and be judged by Christ as well. The invisible internal reality is way more important than the external visible sign. True Jewishness, as in true, it's also true Christianity, is a matter of the heart by the Spirit. So are you a real Christian, or do you live for the praise of men? Do you focus on externals? Is your confidence on a physical sign, on your baptism certificate, or because you're a member of a church, or because you do things at church, or because you're part of the visible church? Are you relying on any of these external works or achievements rather than Christ himself and his finished? You need to come to Christ today and experience his salvation. Amen.